We are about to take counsel together on matters concerning this county. We should seek to faithfully discharge our duties of office, both in our debate and in our decisions, and promote the health, safety and well-being of those we serve. Thank you. Fellow councillors, officers and members of the public, including those listening in via the webcast, welcome to our council meeting this evening. Before we get underway, I'd like to begin by paying tribute to Mr. Jim Bolton, a volunteer at Oakham Castle who recently passed away. Members may not be aware, but following his daughter's death at just 21 years old, Jim was the founder of the Karen Ball Fund to provide care for terminally ill people in Rutland. The fund has contributed to many projects in the county, helped pay for the special care suite at Rutland Memorial Hospital, and raised £45,000 to furnish and equip the Rutland Suite, which is a palliative care unit in the Osborne building at Leicester Royal Infirmary. The charity established by Jim also installed over 70 defibrillators across the towns and villages of Rutland. And most recently, Jim personally guided the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh around Oakham Castle during their visit to Rutland. I'm sure members will join me in expressing our thanks to Jim for all his work on behalf of our communities, and our thoughts, of course, are with his family and all those who knew him. Thank you, Councillor Brown. So we're not expecting a fire drill this evening, therefore, in the event of a fire alarm, please leave the chamber by the nearest exit and assemble at the rear of the council car park. Before we get onto the agenda, I'd like to remind members to stand and ensure your microphone is switched on when speaking, and switch your microphone off when you've finished speaking. And when voting, please ensure your hand is fully raised. Councillor Smith, I think you'll have to choose which arm you use quite carefully. Wait until voting is confirmed before lowering it. So onto the agenda. First item is apologies. Have we any apologies this evening, Mr. Delaney?
Chairman, we received apologies from Councillor McRobb. Therefore, councillors voting to 25 this evening. Okay. Item 2, Chairman's announcements. Since the last ordinary meeting of Council, myself or the Vice Chairman have attended the following civic engagements: Lord Mayor of Leicester's civic service at Leicester Cathedral, the funeral service for Councillor Hannah Edwards, the Rural Community Council Centenary celebration at Winstanley House in Leicester, the Chairman of South Coast Stephen District Council civic service at Bourne Abbey Church, the High Sheriff of Rutland Service for Volunteers at Uppiam Parish Church, a visit to Inspire to Try at Manton, the launch of the fostering film, which was entitled Everything, here in the Chamber, the memorial service for Councillor Hannah Edwards at Oakham School, the Royal British Legion Service of Remembrance at All Saints Church, Oakham, the Armistice Service at Oakham Castle, and a visit to HM Prison Stocken to view the new Oakham wing. Item 3, announcements from the Leader, members of Cabinet or the Head of Paid Service. So I'll invite the Leader to address Council. Councillor Wallop.
Thank you. Members asked that I provide Council with an update when all the discussions and negotiations regarding Catmouth Sports Centre had come to an end. You members will have seen the detailed update that I provided via email earlier this week. I appreciate that Councillor Carr's question was submitted prior to that update, but as I had committed to give one at the first opportunity I had following negotiations, I did, hence the email. It's not appropriate to share the full details in a public forum such as this while we're still in an election period. However, I can confirm that RCC has now ended its lease agreement with Catmouth College, as well as successfully concluding discussions with all those who had prior involvement in the running of Catmouth Sports Centre. Information that was previously exempt from public reports about our leisure contract because it was commercially sensitive will be published tomorrow, along with a further public announcement.
Councillor Waller, do any other members of the Cabinet wish to speak? Nope. Okay. Item 4, declarations of interest. As a farmer, I have to declare a disclosable interest in the agriculture motion at item 14C and will withdraw from the meeting when we come to that meeting. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. 14B, the winter fuel motion, which I'm putting forward. Obviously, you are aware that I look after my father, who is an OAP. And like you, 14C, the agricultural motion, I will be withdrawing as we have a family farm.
Thank you. Councillor West.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll withdraw from item 14C as well, as I'm also a farmer.
Any other declarations of interest? Okay. Item 5, minutes of previous meeting. So we have before us the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of September. And as a reminder, members should abstain from voting on minutes of meetings which they did not attend. So I wasn't in attendance, so I'll ask the Vice Chairman to move that the minutes of the last meeting be approved as an accurate record. So, Councillor Harvey, you've proposed that, yes? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Waller. All those in favour of the minutes being approved, please raise your hand.
Chair.
Those against? Abstentions?
5, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Those minutes are therefore approved. Item 6, petitions, deputations and questions from members of the public. No petitions, deputations or questions have been received. Item 7, questions from members of the council. So 4 questions have been received from members, and these will be taken in the order in which they were received. So, Councillor Beggy, can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I'm passionate about young people and sport. I've stood up here on many occasions on this subject. With reference to the new school sports offering, why was there so little consultation and transparency? So much so that schools, etc., found out only at a schools forum meeting that Rutland County Council were planning to withdraw support and potentially damage the health and well-being of future generations. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beggy. As Councillor Smith is not the relevant portfolio holder for this matter, I will ask Councillor Wise to respond as the portfolio holder responsible for the communities and prevention teams.
Thank you, Chair. Rutland County Council is committed to maintain the sport, recreation and physical activity programme for all children in Rutland, and is working closely with schools leaders and Active Together Leicestershire to create a sustainable school sports offer that all children and young people can enjoy. Schools and community representatives have been reassured of the continuation of the wider wellbeing offer, the active referral and steady steps programme, and that there will continue to be a school sports offer. It is exceptional within local authorities, so Rutland is exceptional, in hosting the school games and sports programme. The changes pertain to the arrangements for hosting the sports games organiser and the school sports partnership. Currently, only 11 schools are part of the school sports partnership. The last signed agreement was 2022-23, and there has been no signed partnership agreement in place since then. Due to changes in the active Rutland staff team, resulting in both officers leaving the organisation by the end of October, a decision had to be brought forward regarding the hosting of the school sports partnership. Having conferred with the schools forum, an immediate action was to secure the continuation of the Sports in Schools programme. This is in place and the programme is being delivered. A formal process to secure a new host organisation for the school Games organiser, overseen by Sport England, has happened, and a new school has been improved to act as host. And since this answer was prepared, that's been confirmed as Uppingham Community College. A working party of schools, facilitated by Active Together Leicestershire, is being convened to develop a sustainable and inclusive school sports offer with work carried out during 2025, which draws on the best practice and learning from existing programmes and which will meet the needs of all Rutland's children and young people. Thank you.
Councillor Wise. Councillor Beggy, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Wise for that detailed response. I think my supplementary is quite simple. Can you give any guarantees that there will be no reduction in the sport offering to young people that will affect their health and well-being in the future?
Councillor Wise.
I can't say that there won't be any reduction in school sports offer, because the school sports offer is in the hands of schools, which we don't control.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corby is next. So can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Wise, please?
Thank you, Chair. We note that Cabinet has decided to award a contract to Lincolnshire to cover the digital demand responsive transport in the county. Given the issues raised by residents using the current Call Connect service, which include buses not arriving on time or being cancelled and pensioners left standing in the cold, please can we explain exactly how this service will work efficiently when run from outside of the county, and what assurance can be given to residents in our rural county who depend on these services so that they can rely upon it?
Thank you, Councillor Corby. Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to set this in context. The new bus network for the county will provide an enhanced county-wide bus service for all residents. This will comprise of the new demand responsive transport service, which will serve all towns and villages in the county, as well as a fixed route, the R1, which will operate throughout the day between Melton, Oakham, Uppingham and Corby. The current R2 service will be replaced by the digital demand responsive transport, but will operate along the fixed route at morning and afternoon peak times. Town services in Oakham and Uppingham will also continue to operate with new electric vehicles. There is actually no recorded history of service issues with the current Call Connect service. I'm well aware of anecdotal comments. Councillor Payne raised it at the last meeting. When we went to look into it, there are no recorded complaints. The developing service level agreement with Lincolnshire County Council will be very robust and include performance targets, financial penalties and clear customer complaint processes if there are service problems. Bear in mind they will be using our new buses for this service. Services will be closely managed and monitored to ensure an efficient and effective service is delivered. I then added they will use our brand new buses. I think I've already said that. Thank you.
Councillor Wise. Councillor Corby, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's good to hear that. Performance targets are always interesting, and I trust that perhaps the performance targets that can be achieved will be let known to members so that we can look at that for scrutiny.
Thank you, Councillor Corby. Councillor Carr is next. Can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Waller, please?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure whether I needed to ask it again, rather because the leader has provided an update, but if you want me to proceed, I can do that. So in August, the leader of the council indicated that she would be able to update us on the closure of Capham Sports Centre in the autumn. Can the leader now give us an update on whether negotiations regarding the liabilities have concluded, including details of the timelines and the total costs?
Councillor Carr. Councillor Waller.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Carr. It was always my intention to give as full information as possible at an appropriate time, which is why I prepared the statement that I read out at the beginning. And as I said at that point, because of the election today, I can't go any further, but more information will be made public tomorrow after the election period. If you have a question, of course, I will endeavour to answer it, a further question.
Councillor Waller. Councillor Carr, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Chair. With tomorrow's public statement, as you said, can you also confirm that that does include the release of the minutes of the March meeting and the recorded vote?
Councillor Waller.
I can confirm that will happen, yes.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Hemsley. Can you ask your question as submitted to Councillor Paul Brown, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Whilst I'm delighted to see that the Council, through the Sustainable Economic Development Manager, are taking a more proactive role in the business community, I am concerned that it could also be another of Rutland's well-kept secret. So, my question is, unsurprisingly, when are we going to have a clear and productive updates that are delivered from the portfolio holders to the elected representatives, and an opportunity to have a discussion about the purpose and expected outcomes from these initiatives and what we can do to help disseminate it into our business communities?
Thank you, Councillor Hemsley. Councillor Brown.
May I thank Councillor Hemsley for his question and for giving me the opportunity to further publicise the work that this administration has taken in furtherance of our economic strategy, which was approved last year. Councillors will be aware that our economic development team have commenced providing regular updates for members through the members' newsletter. This will deliver regular details of our current planned initiatives. Though many are at an earlier stage, some are already beginning to develop positive results. Externally to Rutland County Council, we have recently launched information initiatives designed to enhance council engagement with the business community. Firstly, Think Rutland. The attended market is the regional and takes the form of a monthly newsletter explaining the offers of and within Rutland. Presently, it started with 45 subscribers within the business community, but is intended to work to expand the monthly growth rates and which are actually already slowly materialising. Secondly, there is now a LinkedIn channel designed to provide frequent updates of council activities to the local business community. This has already achieved 140 new followers, and as at this afternoon, 242 impressions from our community updates and online presence within its first month. There are a range of detailed projects that have been funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Funding that were specifically designed and funded to support the local business community. Full particulars of all those initiatives are detailed on the Council's UKSB web page and include the provision of business support in conjunction with Business Lincolnshire. This scheme provides multi-stranded expertise and now includes a monthly drop-in sessions at the King Centre. Rutland Rural Enterprise Grant. This was launched in July 24. This grant has approved allocations of £99,000. This has received 14 local business applications to support specific ventures or projects. The grant is proposed to support those ventures and those that are compliant have been approved. Rutland Innovative Business Support Project. This started in October 24. The initiative is currently accepting expressions of interest for its voucher scheme and capital grants. Applicants will be reviewed by the project steering group, and the closing date for this is the 2nd of December. Again, Much more detail on the website. And as he will be aware, this scheme is in cooperation with Loughborough, De Montfort and Leicester universities. Rutland Business Masterclasses. Over the last 8 weeks, it has helped 8 applicant local businesses develop growth strategies. Participants have provided positive feedbacks, particularly on the benefit of in-person sessions that have been given, that point to ways of local networking, collaborative learning with the Rutland business community. This will conclude in the new year. There is the upcoming Rutland Skills Boost Grant. This grant will enable local organisations to upskill potential employees to specific local workforce needs. There are 2 more. The Town Centre Improvement Scheme, in collaboration with our town councils and the retail economy team, is now supporting the development of comprehensive short, medium and long-term
Councillor Brown, can I stop you there? Councillor Heckles, can you not use your phone in the chamber, please?
The first meetings have been held and more will be detailed and are in the diary for the new year. The support visitor economy. We continue to support our partnership with Discovery Rutland to focus on enhancing the local visitor economy, supporting projects including the creation of a promotional video, and there are also proposed promotional activities currently under discussion. Further, it is intended that there will also be a programme of support, specific sector workshops and training. I note that Councillor Helmsley feels that despite all the above, that these initiatives are well-kept secrets. Should he have further suggestions on how we could promote those initiatives, then I invite him to contact me directly with those suggestions and I'm all ears.
Councillor Brown, Councillor Hemsley, supplementary.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your response, and having spent a lot of time in the local business community, I have to say that there are very few people who know what is on offer. So how are we going to ensure that our SMEs of Rutland get to hear about these opportunities and access them? Also, some support for bidding for Rutland work, Rutland County Council work, as we should be procuring at least 30% of our suppliers locally. So it's about getting information into the community. I'm happy to work with you and I will come and talk to you, but it is actually still a very well kept secret for many.
Councillor Hemsley, Councillor Brown.
Councillor Hemsley, of course, is chair of the, or motivating force of the new revived Rutland Chamber of Commerce, and I'm trust and hope that he will be making all his members aware. We have, I thought, listed all those items that I can foresee that will be useful to getting the information through. And again, if he has more ideas, then I'm only too pleased to listen to it. The purpose and expected outcome for these initiatives, so far as they are funded by the UKSB, comply with the criteria in which the funds were originally granted, which was approved by Cabinet in their initial application for UKPS funding right back in, I think, December 21. So when he asks what are the purposes and outcome, they are already defined in there. In respect of your request that we fund locally 30% of our purchases from local sources, that will have to be looked into and I will have a discussion and then revert to him when we meet.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Item 8, referral of committee decisions to the Council. There are no referrals for consideration this evening. Item 9, call-in of decisions from Cabinet meetings during the period from the 26th of September to the 21st of November 2024. There are no call-ins for consideration this evening. Item 10, report from Cabinet. We have no reports from Cabinet this evening. Item 11, reports from committees of the Council. We have no reports from committees of the Council this evening. Item 12, reports from scrutiny. We have 2 reports from scrutiny this evening. Item 12A is the annual scrutiny report, which is on pages 13 to 38 of your pack. This is report number 96/2024. Councillor Ross, can you introduce the report and propose the recommendation, please?
Thank you. Can I first say that the long delay in the production of this report has arisen due to certain events, in particular the general election and the sudden death of one of our members, Councillor Hannah Edwards. My overall assessment is that the committee is operating in a manner that covers the scope of activities of this council and has adapted effectively from its previous three-committee structure. I have three further observations that I would like to ask you to note. First of all, in regard to capability, the committee is continuing to improve its capabilities and member training is being offered. Members have also attended training sessions run by the East Midlands Council Scrutiny Network and the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. Secondly, working procedures. Through the support of officers, we have adopted a more structured process to selecting items for consideration by scrutiny. And thirdly, in terms of the number of meetings, there has been some public comment on the reduction in the number of meetings from the previous three-committee structure. I would ask you to note that the full committee met on 7 occasions. In addition, the Economic Strategy Task and Finish Group met on 2 occasions, the Asset Review Task and Finish Group met on 2 occasions, and the Flooding Evidence Panel met on 5 occasions. Finally, could I thank all those councillors who are not on the committee members, but who gave their time so freely to our working groups and panels, without which this committee could not function. So I now recommend that the council notes the annual scrutiny committee scrutiny report, I beg your pardon, 23-24, and approves its publication.
Councillor Ross, do I have a seconder? Councillor Payne.
I'd like to second the motion, Chair.
Do you wish to reserve the right to speak later, Councillor Payne? Okay, okay, members. So, motion is now open to debate. Any members wishing to speak? Councillor Waller.
Thank you. Scrutiny is a vital function for any council, or indeed for our government nationally. And the better the scrutiny, the better the council. So I'd like to commend all members who've been involved in scrutiny, whether as a member of the committee or, as Councillor Ross pointed out, as a member of one of the working groups, for the time and effort they put in to achieve what has been achieved and is demonstrated in this report. So thank you.
Councillor Waller. Other members? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, echo those comments. It is a report on last year's scrutiny, and it is vital that we have good and effective scrutiny for this council to run. And I would, having been a member of this committee for the last 2 years, I would commend actually the work of particularly of the task and finish groups and the evidence panels that are set up. I think they've really delved into a lot of the key issues, and we will be discussing the flooding evidence panel later on, but particularly the economic strategy and the flooding evidence panel, I think, have been very worthwhile pieces of work. It was disappointing to note that the improvement plan for scrutiny, because we need to constantly review how scrutiny works, particularly having made the change from having 3 committees into 1. It was a bit disappointing to note that it wasn't produced in July 23 as planned, and it was finally done in March 24. And just like to record thanks to the scrutiny officer for her support in doing this, and the work she's done to support this committee. The only other thing, I just did spot a slight typo when I was reading through. I didn't spot it when it went to scrutiny. On page 25, it's my initial is R and not S. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Other members? In that case, Councillor Ross, would you like to sum up?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. The committee, the report is as been presented in your papers. Thank you.
Okay, the motion is that Council notes the annual scrutiny report 2023 to 24 and approves its publication. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. And therefore, the motion is carried. Item 12B is the Flooding Evidence Panel report, which is pages 39 to page 126. This is report number 125, 2024. Councillor Stevenson, as chair of the evidence panel set up by scrutiny at council's request, I believe you are introducing the report and proposing the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members will remember the special council meeting that was called as a result of the unprecedented flooding events. That was in part prompted by huge amounts of comments by our residents, and I believe as a council we felt that that was important, that we should look into those areas, hence having an evidence panel. Before going into the report proper, and to reassure you, I'm not reading out 14 recommendations because I believe we're all pretty good at reading. I am going to start with some thank yous. What was very interesting was the sheer number of councillors who volunteered to be on the flooding panel, knowing that it was going to be working on very tight timelines, delving into a very complex area. And I think that speaks volumes about how much we all place our residents absolutely at the forefront of our work. So a huge thank you to those councillors, and also a huge thank you to Councillor Edwards, who was meticulous developing questions for the resident and parish surveys. I'd also like to thank our Rutland County Council officers. Our scrutiny officer managed to keep us all online producing reports, and I know Chief Exec, our Director of Places, our monitoring officer, just to pick out 3 people, made sure that time was allowed in a very, very busy schedule to produce an awful lot of information to look through. So thank you to the RCC officers, and also to the external agencies. I know that there was a lot of liaison, a lot of hard work, a lot of fact-finding, because actually some of the things said in the public domain at first glance were quite potentially alarming. We, as a council, as a group of members, worked together to make sure that we could find the evidence, and I believe that in here there is an objective reflection on anecdotal evidence whilst also presenting hard facts about how things were handled, our duty in terms of handling those, and of course ultimately could there be improvements made, could actions be taken to help manage flooding in the future. You will see in the report, and this was partly because I think this is the first time we've had an evidence panel as a way of looking at something of concern and importance to residents. Because of the sheer number of councillors who volunteered, it meant that we were able to split into 3 distinct groups: community, internal and external, which meant that the deep dive happened very effectively. That is my opinion, and I'm sure other members of the panel can confirm or deny that. That has meant that we've got a huge range of evidence as represented in the appendices. That evidence, we've been really careful to make sure that the statements are objective, that they aren't opinions, that they are objective, whilst acknowledging that residents' comments and observations obviously deserve credence, and that has been covered in the appendices. The 14 recommendations that you have before you are written with the intention of being deliverable. There is no point putting in recommendations that there is neither the funding for nor the capacity to deliver. So it is intended that those recommendations are deliverable, that they will address the management of any future flooding events, but also crucially will aim to prevent the impact of flooding. Within those recommendations, there are clear themes around the coordination, communication, maintenance of our highways network, our road surface condition, traffic management, and of course our building development. That in itself speaks to the complexity and the interdependencies with the issue of flooding. I'm very happy to take any questions about the report. I do hope that Council will be able to support the recommendations within this, and also to note a lot of those things, and I'm sure the portfolio holder may wish to comment, there are things that are very much underway, because I appreciate we are very much in autumn and winter now, but I know that things are underway. So I think I'll stop now, Chair, because I've probably run out of time, and I'll sit down for questions.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Karen Payne. Councillor Payne, do you reserve the right to speak later?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. So we've got a seconder, so it's now open to debate. Members. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question as such. It's more of an observation, particularly with the recommendations, and it is very welcome to know that the recommendations that have been put in the report are achievable, will be doable, because there's nothing worse than having a set of recommendations that are never fulfilled. I was really happy to see around in the recommendations around adoption. As you're aware, in Barleythorpe there are a number of areas within Barleythorpe that have yet to be adopted, and that this does cause challenges. I also welcome recommendation number 13 around planning applications and monitoring new developments, because as you will be aware, for those that did visit the site in Barleythorpe, the flooding area was indeed very, very close to the new housing. And in fact, there is still an application that is live for further housings literally just around the corner from when that flooding occurred. So I just welcomed the report's content. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Other members? Councillor Ross.
I just wanted to say a few words in terms of context. The Evidence Panel report has highlighted to the Council, towns and parishes issues that can be addressed in the short term, as well as providing useful input to the Regulation 19 report that must follow from the flooding events that we saw in 2023-24. So I think there's a general raising of public awareness that this report has brought about. And the latter, the Regulation 19 report, must be progressed as a matter of priority if it is to have any value. Together, these reports should provide the information necessary to establish a long-term plan to mitigate future flood risk in Rutland. We must also recognise, however, that many other areas of the country, and in particular in our area, Lincolnshire and the Fens, remain at far greater risk from major flooding damage arising from climate change than Rutland, and that it is likely that Government and the Environment Agency will prioritise spending based upon the risk to livelihoods and property. Consequently, the delivery of those low-cost recommendations made in the Evidence Panel report will assume a greater importance for Rutland. Finally, and I would just repeat what Councillor Stevenson said, we should also acknowledge the work that officers have put into progressing many of the mitigation measures prior to the official publication of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Other members? Councillor Payne, Councillor Wise, I'll bring you in at the end if that's all right. Councillor Payne, then Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment on the methodology. I think it's the first time that we used an evidence-based panel, which was very thorough, very in-depth, very fast-moving, and I think the results have been very positive, and I'd like to hope that the scrutiny panel will use this methodology in the future.
Councillor Payne, Councillor Powell.
Thank you. Yes, to echo Councillor Stevenson's comments, and I, being a member of this panel and being involved in the internal area of investigation, I think members, we've done a really good job on this, and it was had some very positive discussions with officers following that, and I think this is, I would commend this as what I see as a very good report. I would hope, I'd hope that Councillor Wise in her response will actually update us on the recruitment of the flood officer, and the Section 19 inquiry, how that is going, and also how we're going to make sure that actually these recommendations are actually implemented, and the reporting mechanism for doing that. I couldn't talk about flooding without mentioning my ward, Whissendine, which floods every time it rains, not just in major events, and the importance of recommendations to do with the maintenance regimes, etc., is really high on our agenda. And I was very pleased that in discussions with officers under recommendation 9, it's about targeting some high risk areas and really focusing on what we do on highways maintenance, because there has been a lot of frustration in my ward about the lack of coordination in response to flooding issues and the prevention of flooding issues, which the community is really wants to be able to be empowered to do things, but finds it very difficult to get things done. So I'm very pleased about that. So yes, I would commend this report. If you haven't read all the appendices, I would recommend that you read them, because there is a lot of detailed information in there, which does illustrate the complexity of the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Wallop.
Thank you. I appreciate that a number of people who've been involved in this piece of work are new to scrutiny, either because they were new to the council or because they were previously part of the administration and not involved with scrutiny. But to be fair to those who were previously involved with the homelessness review, that too was an evidence-based approach, and the appendices to that were the evidence. So I wouldn't want my colleagues who were involved in that very thorough piece of work to feel that their work wasn't of value, because it most certainly was, and has changed some of our practices as a council as a result. The point that Councillor Powell made about how is everybody going to know whether these recommendations have been implemented, if I can put it that way. Some of you will have noticed that I got my little book out and started scribbling during this debate. I was scribbling myself a note to say we have to have a way of feeding back on these. So I totally accept everything you said in that respect, Councillor Powell, and we will formulate a way of reporting back to council in a way that is meaningful but not overtly time-consuming of one of these meetings. And when Cabinet and officers have come to a conclusion as to what we think is the best way of doing it, we will share that at least with the Chair and Vice Chair of Scrutiny, if not more widely within Scrutiny, see if you're happy with the approach, because if not, we'll do something different. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallop. Other members, Councillor Wilby and Councillor Hemsley.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to underscore one, I think, really important aspect of the report, and that is the emergency action plans for each of the wards and villages that take place. It really is important that we make sure that we have all the names of the people, and all our wards have got very useful people in them. We just need to make sure they're itemised down, and there is a structure within each of our wards to, if the bell goes, we know how to do it and who to help. So I urge you all to work on those action plans.
Councillor Wilby, Councillor Hemsley.
Thank you very much, Chair. One thing I noticed was that some of the people haven't responded to the questions that was raised, and I would maybe suggest that we take some strong words with them and say, look, you know, we're trying to do something for the community, you're part of the community, can you please respond? But that's just a suggestion. And I would strongly suggest that we need to have, probably through Rutland County Council, a central contact point, because reading some of the reports, it was clear that there was a lot of effort going in from some fantastic people, but it was slightly fragmented and disorganised. So I think, you know, most places have an emergency access plan or whatever, and maybe not just for flooding, but for other reasons as well, God forbid, that we should have something in place through the council, a contact number that maybe is only activated under the authority of the CEO, saying, right, here's a contact number, and everyone knows that's where you divulge the information to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hemsley. Other members? In that case, as portfolio holder, Councillor Wise.
I'm not sure I'm answering these in any particular order. I've been trying to scribble down. The Section 19 report is due in approximately February, as was originally. It is underway. The flood officer appointment, we have struck difficulties. Unfortunately, we weren't the only area of Great Britain that had flooding, and all of those require Section 19 reports. So every consultancy in the country has been out appointing all the best flood officers at considerably more income than as a local authority we can offer. We have gone back out to advertise again. Whilst I'm on Councillor Powell's questions, Whissendine has had a big natural flood defence response. I went to a presentation in Leicester about what they've been doing as part of the SOAR basin work. A lot of that has been on private land, so we weren't allowed to be publicised what was happening, but it is being held up as a pillar of the way that we should be approaching natural flood defences. If you haven't seen the presentation, I will try and get you a copy of it.
Can I raise a point of information?
Point of information? Yes, you can.
If there is, as I can't speak again. I'm well aware of what's happening in my ward. Thank you, Councillor Wise.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Wise.
Thank you. I had no wish to insult Councillor Pat. It was as much as anything for everybody else who might not have known about what was going on in Whissendine. I would like to say I think it was very important, as Councillor Stevenson said, to give residents the chance to have their say. They may not have been in possession of all the facts, but their experience was their experience, and I think it was important to listen to that. I fully support Councillor Wilby's point about the resilience plans. We've had a series of 3 webinars available to our parishes. We've held a parish liaison meeting when we had people in from the Lead Local Flood Authority and the Resilience Forum to take people through that process, provided them with templates. The problem is we need to keep that momentum up in the parishes to move them forward. And we know of some parishes that have them, but actually absolutely everybody named in that plan has either moved or is no longer able to provide the help they once were. So it's equally important that they're kept up to date. And the last one was the central name for contact. We have always had a central name. I believe it may not have been as well publicised as the residents would wish. And that is a recommendation that we will be following up. Thank you very much, Councillor Hemsley.
Thank you. Councillor Wise, thank you. If there's no other members, then Councillor Stevenson, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
Oh, I was just going to sum up.
I think they're one and the same.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I think the point that Councillor Carr, the development, the before, during and after is something, and I am looking over at Councillor Brown, not because he's talking to Councillor Wise, but Councillor Brown, I'm hoping with your planning hat on, we can really be putting pressure on that, because certainly some of the anecdotal evidence, I'll pick my words carefully, would suggest that a greater weight to the flood assessments would certainly go down very well with development in Rutland, but I'm sure that you are obviously on top of that. And the other point, thank you, Councillor Powell, how do we make sure that when, as I've noted, an awful lot of people have been involved in work coming up with sensible, deliverable recommendations, that implementation and reporting mechanism, noting the point that it shouldn't become time consuming when actually there are other things to do, definitely I think perhaps when we're looking at how scrutiny functions, if this flooding report actually is the start of preparedness for the county as we move through this decade and century. And I will stop there, Chair, but I do hope everybody can support this because it is common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. So the motion is that Council notes the report, and you'll be delighted to know that I'm also not going to read out all the 14 recommendations, and approves the recommendations as detailed in the papers. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion is therefore carried. Item 13, joint arrangements and external organisations. 4 reports have been received. These will be taken in order in which they were received. I invite each member to speak to their report in turn and provide an opportunity for any questions. The first one was to be from Councillor McRobb, who is absent this evening. Is anyone else wishing? Councillor Ross, are you wishing to speak
Well,
to the report on the Flood and Coastal Committee?
Yeah, it's.
I take
really,
it that's a yes then.
The answer to that is yes. Thank you,
Right.
Chairman. There's one update for the meeting on the 14th of November. New working groups are to be established to produce new river basin management plans based upon the lead local authorities responsible for those catchments, and that's the only addition to the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ross. Any questions from members on that report? Nope. Okay, Councillor Waller, do you wish to speak to your report on sparse?
Thank you. Only to emphasise to you all the second bullet point. The feeling is that we in rural areas are not going to be recognised for the needs that we've got in the way that we would hope, but clearly sparse and the wider body, the Rural Services Network, will continue to lobby, and I will continue to be active in both bodies, and in fact as an executive member of Rural Services Network I do have an opportunity to put forward a number of the issues that we raise in this council that aren't necessarily being raised elsewhere, but which they then run with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Any questions for members on that report? Nope. Okay, Councillor Wise, do you wish to speak to your report on the police and crime panel?
The only item that I wish to particularly emphasise is the paragraph about the use of S106 monies to install CCTV cameras. We had been in discussions with the police authority about whether we could use this for our CCTV. In Rutland, there seemed to be some dispute, but the PPC very kindly agreed at the meeting, minuted, that authorities could, if they wished, use S106 money for CCTV.
Councillor Wise, any members wish to ask any questions on that report? Okay, Councillor Stevenson, do you wish to speak to a report on the Rural Community Council?
Very, very briefly, I'm sure members have read it. I will circulate the link for the Impact magazine when the latest edition is out, and I'd like to underscore and emphasise just how much work the Rural Community Council does in reaching our hard-to-reach groups across Rutland, but I won't go into the details there. One thing I did just want to highlight, I did reference attending the audit committee there. In my report, and the audit meeting happened before the October budget was announced, there were questions around the potential impact on the employer contributions for national insurance and the thresholds at which point those contributions need to start, as well as increases in the minimum wage. Since then, it's clear that there will be a 26% increase in the wage bill roughly for that. So hopefully that won't have an impact on the excellent services that get delivered for the benefit of people in rural communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Any questions from members on that report? Okay, in that case, all reports will be taken as received and noted. Item 14, notices of motion. We have 3 notices of motion this evening, and these will be taken in the order in which they were received. So the first one is item 14A, Rutland Water Fluoridation, which is pages 127 to 130 of your pack. Councillor West. I was looking at Councillor Wise, and it's Councillor West, isn't it? Can you please introduce and propose your motion?
Thank you, Chairman. You're the second chairman now to confuse us this week. In October, I attended scrutiny and as a substitute, and the issue of dentistry was covered extensively there, and it was very interesting. It was most enlightening to see when we had a delegation from well, we had several. We had Health Watch Rutland, and we had the LNR ICB come to speak to us, and they made us aware of quite a lot of the details of their ongoing work, and opened our eyes to some of the issues which they are experiencing in providing the residents of Rutland with acceptable levels of dental care. I'm not going to go into details of this because a lot of it is in which you would have read, but there is significant challenge that the LNR are facing, the ICB are facing in finding dental practices to accept NHS contracts and finding the right pricing point for units of dental activity, which is the upshot of which is that residents of Leicestershire and Rutland are struggling with access to dentistry. And as you can see in the report on the motion here, 15.1% of Rutland 5-year-olds have visually obvious dental decay. Now, whilst that is below the national average, it is still 15.1% of our young people, which to me seems a striking amount. Dental access in last financial year was lower than pre-pandemic levels, and this difference was largest in Rutland with a reduction of over 17%. And we have my notes at scrutiny. Give me a moment. Only 74% of commissioned dentistry was delivered. So we are falling a long way short, and it struck me, what can we do to help with this? And one of the things that we can do, and it is by no means a short-term fix, take years to deliver. This is but the first step on quite a long road. One of the things that we can do is to add fluoride to our water. Now, this is something that not everybody agrees on, but it's an option that's open to us, and so I'm bringing it here before you tonight to Council to see how everybody else in this chamber feels about adding fluoride to our water. I know how some members feel already because we've had conversations about this. there are a number of advantages and disadvantages. In my mind, there are more advantages than there are disadvantages. Fluoride is a naturally occurring substance. It does occur naturally in a lot of water sources around the country, but where it is lower than levels where it is added, we can add up to a maximum of 1.5 ppm. That is an internationally accepted safe level for water fluoridation, which will reduce dental caries in young people over a long period, and still leave residents safe. So I'm bringing it forward as a proposal. If anybody has any questions, then I'll happily try my best to answer them. I'm not going to read it all out because it's a long motion, and as the chairman has set his example of not reading out long motions, I shall follow it.
Thank you, Councillor West. That's very considerate. Councillor Chatfield, as the seconder, would you like to speak now or wait until later in the debate?
Later, please, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So it's now open to debate. Councillors, Councillor Ross, Councillor Cart.
Can I provide some information partly in support of the motion? The issue of fluoridation will come before the LLR Health Scrutiny Committee later this month. Mike Sands is going to present that report. Councillor Ray Payne and I have requested the most recent authority that has brought in water fluoridation is Northumbria, and that took approximately 12 years. And we've asked them to use that as a reference so that we try to understand why it takes such an inordinate length of time to come to a decision which appears to me to be common sense. So we will report back through scrutiny. Thank you.
Councillor Ross, Councillor Carr, then Councillor Heckles and Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure how others people feel about this, but you have my full support on this one. It does have a very good evidence base, and to put some more context in there, one of the biggest reasons children go into hospital is for tooth extraction. So there gives a really good reason why this is very much needed, and it is also part of best start of life. So it gets my full support. Thank you.
Councillor Cart, Councillor Heckles.
I was very surprised when we went on a tour at Anglian Water with a couple of other councillors that Anglian Water actually do put fluoride in all of their water, and then for Rutland they actually have to remove it. I did raise it some time ago at one of our briefings, and I was told that maybe it wasn't so good for our older population. So I have had a little look at it. I think Rutland's demographics should be taken into consideration. So in the United States, Public Health Services in 2015 recommended fluoride levels of 0.7 milligrams per litre. This was a reduction from the 1962 guidance of 0.7 to 1.2 due to the fact that people are now getting more fluoride from other sources such as toothpaste. I probably feel that we need to do a little bit more research on the studies done on the benefits and disadvantages of fluoride in drinking water. There's been a University of Edinburgh study which linked fluoride in drinking water in relation to later dementia risk. It found that higher levels of aluminium and fluoride were related to dementia risk in a population of men and women who consumed relatively low drinking water levels of both. It was published in 2019, but it used data from 2005 to 2012. I would like to see a sort of proper feasibility study undertaken before a final decision is made on this. I don't have medical training, but I think we should be aware of all the side effects. And also understand that the correct dose and the most beneficial doses that would be appropriate. There are obviously other alternatives to putting fluoride in drinking water. These apparently include an oral supplement, such as a chewable tablet, or in liquid form, or even a high fluoride toothpaste. I just feel that we should get involvement from dentists and also people in the medical world, because obviously they know a lot more about this than we do. And really, we should maybe spend some more time thinking about how to improve our dentistry in Rutland. It isn't really, adding fluoride isn't really going to be an alternative to regular dental appointments and hygienist appointments. Thank you.
Councillor Heckles, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I would very much like to support this motion, particularly as I am portfolio holder for Children's Services. As Councillor West has pointed out, 15% of 5-year-olds in Rutland have significant dental problems. I think it's a national disgrace, as Councillor Carr has pointed out, that the commonest reason for children to be admitted to hospital is for dental reasons. This is a preventive measure, so it does not require individual action. And preventive measures is a good way to prevent illness. There is plenty of evidence to support fluoridation in drinking water to prevent dental caries. The evidence first came when it was noted that where drinking water was naturally fluoridated, the incidence of dental caries was much less. In looking at the evidence, I've been researching it a bit. I was surprised to find that the original trial on fluoridation was in 1945. In terms of trials, that goes a long way back. It was in Grand Rapids in the United States, and they fluoridated the water there. It was a trial, but they stopped it because it was quite obvious that there was a significant reduction in dental caries in children. In 2022, more than 209 million people, or 72% of the US population served by public water supplies, have access to water with fluoride levels that prevent tooth decay. There are multiple studies that show that fluoridation has not been associated with any serious illness, particularly studies from Australia that I looked at. So yes, I very much support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Lambert and Councillor Zoinga-Ball.
Thank you, Chair. So to me, this seems like a bit of a no-brainer, and I'm glad it's something we're discussing tonight and hopefully taking steps to press ahead with. We all know from our own experiences how difficult it's become to get an NHS dentist in Rutland in recent years, and many of us have heard shocking stories about people performing DIY dentistry or living with the terrible pain of poor dental health. This obviously isn't good enough, and it's a source of frustration, but we as a council can generally take very few practical direct steps to address this. So I feel more positive about this motion, knowing it's one of those rare opportunities where we can all vote to directly for steps towards improving dental healthcare for future generations in Rutland and delivering all the good that comes with that. Of course, no one is saying that this is a silver bullet or even something that will have short-term benefits. However, the evidence for the medium to longer-term benefit is undeniable. We've all done our own research, so I won't bore you with lots of statistics, but one that really stuck out to me was a report from the Office for Health Improvement. The Office for Health Improvement and Disparities found that 56% of hospital admissions for the removal of decayed teeth among children and young people could be prevented in the most deprived areas of the country through water fluoridation schemes. And that's just one statistic from one report, and there's lots of other evidence out there that sort of supports similar findings. So in short, water fluoridation almost undeniably improves dental health, and its benefits are most felt in the most deprived areas. This in turn saves the NHS money and reduces demand on already overstretched services. That's why I'll be supporting this motion. However, as Councillor Heckles mentioned, there is some potential evidence out there that high levels of fluoride can have negative health effects, particularly from the research I saw on the development of younger children. It is potential evidence, it's quite disputed, and it's not necessarily proven at all, whereas the benefits for dental health are proven. But that doesn't mean we should take it seriously, and as Councillor Heckles mentioned, work with the experts and make sure that level of the fluoridation that is put into the water stream, hopefully in the future, is the right level and we get it right. So some caution, as other councillors have mentioned, but overall this will almost certainly be a good thing for Rutland, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Zollinger-Ball. Councillor Lambert, can you turn your microphone on, please?
Thank you, Chair. I obviously I'm not a scientist either, so I'm purely going with what I've read, and there are clearly benefits to putting fluoride into the water, but there are obviously also some disadvantages, and there's some health concerns. And my personal concern with it is that water is a ground and main requirement, and there is no way of taking fluoride out of water if someone doesn't want to have fluoride in his water. And even though this is probably a fringe opinion, this is something that maybe concerns some people. And if it is a concern for people, they sort of don't have a choice of not having water with fluoride in it. So therefore, I'm a bit concerned about this option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zollinger-Ball. Councillor Stevenson, then Councillor Payne.
Thank you very much, Chair. There, one question, which I don't know if you will be able to answer. Two questions, actually, Councillor McCartney, about that. Clearly, we don't want children going to hospital to have their teeth removed. Clearly, fluoride is, and as you say, Councillor Lambert, a lot of research proving the validity of using it. However, the research that Councillor Heckles has looked at in terms of, is there a link with dementia? I noticed one of the reports was with mice rather than humans. So there is some doubt there. Your point there about actually removing people's freedom of choice over whether to have it or not. My question is, noting Councillor Ross saying it took 12 years to get it in, I'm assuming that if we agree to this tonight, obviously we are not experts in this field, that there will be an opportunity to review hard scientific evidence and to say, actually, Rutland perhaps doesn't need this because it's already got high levels. I'm assuming this is merely a, yes, you can look into this, but we could stop it if the emphatic evidence suggests it's not right for Rutland. Is that correct? Brilliant. And my other question was purely curiosity. Second point on the background information and context, I understand that poor oral health and actually not accessing sufficient dentistry will have implications for oral cancer. Dentists obviously very well qualified at spotting abnormalities in the mouth, so not being able to access a dentist for that. However, it does say some of which include diabetes, heart disease, lung conditions, and interestingly, dementia. And I was wondering how the good oral health linked to those things. I appreciate you are not a doctor, Councillor West, and Councillor Smith, you may well want to have a chat with me afterwards because I know you've already spoken, but that was more of a curious question. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Karen Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot's been said already about positive and negative benefits of fluoridation in water. And I have to say that I agree with Councillor Zollinger-Ball that our residents should have the choice of whether they want fluoridation or not. If they want fluoridation, they can take it through toothpaste, mouthwashes, tablets. But if they want to avoid any negative impact, maybe on dementia, which is a concern given our demographic, then those people should be allowed to not have the impact of fluoridation in water. So we shouldn't take away our residents' freedom of choice, and I'm afraid I can't support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Ellison, then Councillor Harvey and Councillor Hemsley.
Thanks. It's been a very interesting debate today, and I would agree with lots of it. It is not a given that fluoride will reduce dental problems, but it goes a way towards it. Interestingly, dental infections can cause heart disease. I know that's my background. Yes, and can actually have an impact on negatively on dementia. So actually having poor oral health can increase dementia, as can some of the statistics show that, yeah, too much fluoridation may increase. I think as Chair of Health and Wellbeing, we will take it carefully. We'll take it slowly. We'll look at the evidence. There is a process. The 12 years that was in the past has been reviewed and revised. It's in your pack as to what's happening now. But we have to go through a process from Health and Wellbeing and write to the Secretary of State eventually if support is there. If it's not there, we won't progress it. So that's where I will give you that confirmation. Thank you.
Councillor Ellison. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. And I would say I do support the motion. I first raised fluoridation with our Director of Public Health when I was portfolio holder. Unfortunately, then the rules were a bit different, and it was something that we couldn't do unilaterally. So I'm pleased that now we can actually, that has changed. The one thing I would state, and I agree with others around the table, that this is a long-term preventative solution. My concerns are that obviously we have our children and young people, and whilst the average is 15%, I do know that some wards in Oakham particularly, that incidence is much higher. And so my concern is our children now and in the short-term future. So I would implore the Health and Wellbeing Board. I know there is a fluoride treatment that can be added onto children's teeth directly. I also know, despite the best endeavours of Public Health and our Health and Wellbeing Board, we can't find any dentists to actually do it. So I would implore our Health and Wellbeing Board to keep trying to find some dentists, or to ask the ICB to actually bring in some treatment, maybe under the guise of a school dentist, to actually start having that treatment for our children, which I think is very important. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Hemsley and Councillor Wallop.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do know of a dentist practice who actually applied to take on the role of being a dentist in Rutland through the NHS, and they had no response. So I think maybe that sort of thing needs to be looked at, because there could be others. But the use of fluoridation, I would ask you all just to go and look at the National Library of Medicine. There is the untold story of fluoridation. So you can go and read it for yourself and make your own minds up. But there are connections with some rare cancers, and also it does clog up the pineal gland as you get older, the dementia, all those things. So there is evidence out there on those. So I would ask you to think very carefully, because there are some unintended consequences of preventing problems with children's teeth, maybe in 10, 15 years' time, and what we end up harvesting in 60 or 70 years' time when they start getting older. So just please be careful.
Thank you, Councillor Hemsley. Councillor Wallop.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of things. I have a lot of sympathy with the view that's been expressed about people need to have a choice, and if it's in the water, you don't get a choice. But for those of our residents who are on very limited incomes, they don't necessarily have a choice to go and buy what can be quite expensive tablets or mouthwashes or whatever to put the fluoride in themselves. So I'd like us all to just bear that in mind. But I would also particularly like to draw your attention to paragraph 7 in the paper before you, under the heading of fluoridization process, and it's 7D. Part of the process is public consultation, and as my colleagues this side have said, if the consultation comes back, no, we don't want it, that is the end of it. So I think we all need to be reassured by that as well. But I do support the motion otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallop. Any other members? In that case, Councillor West, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. There's been some really interesting contributions there. I freely acknowledge that that there are issues and people will have concerns, and I understand that. they're quite valid. But as you can see, and as Councillor Wallace just said, we will be having extensive public consultation on this. We're not making a final decision here tonight. This is simply me bringing this here into the council chamber so that as members we can say, well, do we want this or not? You know, because if we do, then we have to start the process, and it is a long process, as you can see. So if we choose to start the process tonight, there are a number of stages at which we can say, no, we don't like it, thank you very much. Sorry. For me, the main one is the public consultation, because that is where we are asking our residents, do you want this or not? If they do want it, then we will pursue it. So we're not setting our level of fluoride addition tonight either. So this is something again that will be looked at, and we can decide whether we want 1.5 ppm or 0.7 ppm or 0.8 ppm or if they don't want it, no ppm. So yeah, thank you members for your contributions. It's been encouraging to see, and yeah, I hope for your support.
Councillor West. So Councillor is asked to approve the motion as set out on page 130 of the agenda. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
I'm 16, Chair.
Those against, please raise your hand.
3, Chair.
Anyone wishing to abstain?
Six, Chairman. The motion is carried.
Therefore, the motion is carried. Say some meetings I go to a bit like pulling teeth, so maybe this will reduce that slightly. 14B, winter fuel, pages 131 to 132. Councillor Stevenson, can you please introduce and propose your motion?
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, everybody is aware of the winter fuel. Clearly, there's been a huge amount of debate about it in the public domain, and a fine variety of memes on Facebook. That's not why I've brought this motion. I've brought this motion because we have a duty as a rural, sparsely populated community to raise the issues with it. In the paper, there is mention of social justice. I would suggest that the winter fuel reduction or means tested for only those on pension credits will have a potentially more significant impact on people who live in rural communities like Rutland. It is, as the leader said very clearly when she gave the update about sparse, it is an opportunity for Rutland to stand proud, representing what we know best, which is the impact of living in this area. Just to give you some data, and you won't be surprised to hear I have not worked out this data myself. I have gone to far more efficient powers than me. Countryside Alliance have worked out that to heat your home in a rural area, on average, costs £778 per year more than if you live in an urban area. Also, let's not forget that a lot of our homes, particularly in the villages, are off the gas grid. Using electricity actually for heating your home is more expensive, I believe, at the moment, and according to the Countryside Alliance, that pumps it up to £801 a year more than our urban counterparts. We also need to consider our housing stock. An awful lot of our housing stock, actually, there's stone rural buildings. They are harder to heat. They are less energy efficient. I appreciate that our local energy partnership, LEAP, do targeted work on helping houses to become more energy efficient. Again, it is targeted support. Some of our houses actually aren't appropriate for those insulation solutions. Within the motion, I've suggested that we need to have a council-led, and I do acknowledge that the paper that I asked a question about at the last full council targeting our low-income households, But just to note, and again, this is from the Policy in Practice website, apparently in Rutland there is £671,000 roughly in unclaimed pension credit. At my very steady GCSE maths, if we allow for a single person receiving £2,677 per annum of pension credit, that means 250 people in our county are missing out. I would suggest that our corporate strategy is looking at protecting our vulnerable, and this is an opportunity to do so. Within the paper, I acknowledge that for some people in Rutland who would have been in receipt of the pension credit, fuel allowance, they don't need it. In fact, I've had residents who've come up to me and said, well, to be honest, I gave my £300 to charity. My issue is the wealthy never get penalised by these types of measures. Never. What does happen, though, that the people just over that pension credit line, I think it's £218 a week to cover everything, dare I mention it, including council tax, actually those people living just above that won't get the support they need. They will be choosing whether to eat or heat. Today, Whitehall have suggested that this unintended consequence of removing this fuel allowance will push 100,000 people across the country into relative poverty by 2027. I absolutely hope that council can support this. We have an opportunity, the leader has an opportunity to stand up for our rural communities and to point out that best laid plans trying to fill holes here and there absolutely penalise rural communities far harder and far more into the long term than it does our urban communities.
Councillor
And
Stevenson, your time is
Oh, I will stop.
up.
Because I respect you very much, Chair. Thank you.
That's very kind of you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Farina, a seconder, do you wish to speak now or wait till later in the debate? Okay.
I'll just echo everything that Councillor Stevenson said, and hopefully Rutland County Council can follow other councils and to be able to represent and to support elderly residents.
Thank you, Councillor Farina. So we're now open to debate. Councillor Ross.
I'll start by saying that to Councillor Stevenson that Councillor McRobb and I have personally struggled with this. but I'm going to point this out. It was a Labour government that introduced the winter fuel allowance in 2003-04, and the amount then was £200 for those under 80 years and £300 for those over 80 years of age. 21 years on, the amount of the allowance remains unchanged, but after you account for RPI over that period, the purchasing power of £200 would now require to be £400, or double the original allowance if it had kept pace with inflation. The Council, as I understand it, has taken steps to ensure that many more of those entitled to pension credit do so, and thereby continue to receive the winter fuel allowance. The Labour Party continues to support the coalition government's policy of a triple lock on the state pension. Councillor McRobb and I recognise that because of the form in which the change has been introduced, some pensioners in our constituency are missing out, where their earnings are literally only tens of pounds above the threshold, and for this loss I apologise for. If I had had a say in the matter, I would have brought the allowance into tax to mitigate this loss for those on the lowest incomes as the fairest and simplest solution to the problem. I will not support the motion as drafted, but will consider a motion to bring the current allowance into tax based upon the principle of social justice. Thank you.
Councillor Ross. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out to Councillor Stevenson that on the 10th of September this year, Cabinet approved a low-income household project, which actually included the body of her first point to ask the council to resolve. In that, what we've bought is a low-income family tracker software product, which will allow us to proactively target those pensioners that are not actively receiving pension credit. And the target was that we would be able to contact and point every pensioner not receiving pension credit, that should be receiving pension credit, to be able to apply for that pension credit by the 31st of December this year, which is the deadline. So we are still on plan with buying that software and producing that result. And rather than just have a campaign, this is actually proactive because the software, in combination with the Better Off calculator that we've bought as well, will allow us to contact every single pensioner that has a phone, obviously, easily, and then we could write to pensioners that don't have a phone to make sure that we are able to help them. It will still require pensioners to engage, but I think that Cabinet has already taken action on that first point, and that this is a substantial change from what previously existed. In terms of the overall motion, I'm in favour of the motion, so I'm in favour. And what I'm pointing out is that we've already started doing the majority of the first point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Beggy.
Thank you. It was just a question, really. I too wholly support what's been put forward, but I think it's important that we try and maximise our voice with central government. I wonder when Councillor Stevenson sums up, you could understand why this is not being said to Council Leader in conjunction with our MP to maximise our voice. Thank you.
Councillor Waller.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I start by saying I think Councillor Beggy's got an extremely good point there, but clearly it's up to the proposer of the motion. As my colleague Councillor Johnson said, we have started to do what we can as a council to try and improve the situation for many of our residents, and he explained very well what that is. That doesn't get over the issue of those who are above the threshold but still in a degree of poverty. And I have every sympathy with those individuals. So the principle of this motion, I clearly support wholeheartedly. However, I am a bit confused about the third bullet point. So I'd like some help with that, please, from Councillor Stevenson, as to why I would be asking for a regulatory impact assessment. As I understand it, a regulatory impact assessment is an internal civil service tool which is produced when there is a proposed policy change and is one of a suite of internal civil service documents used when policy and legislative changes are proposed. It's not an equalities impact assessment. And so what I want to understand, if I am going to write, is what we are expecting to achieve by asking them to produce this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Other members? Councillor Powell.
you, Councillor Powell. Any other members? Oh, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I share some of Rosemary's concerns, and as I've had a conversation with Councillor Stevenson on this, whilst I support a lot of what she says with regard to our rural communities, I actually have always had an issue with the universal nature of the winter fuel payment, particularly because our more vulnerable families and disabled people actually benefit through half the amount. And so I will be abstaining from the motion because I can't support something that only supports part of our population and not the rest of our vulnerable community, which I think is equally should be deserving of the full amount. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey. Any other members? Councillor Wise.
I've written half an essay down here. I'm going to skip most of that. I have some sympathy with Councillor Powell's point about why are we debating national policy in a county council. It's very clear to me, though, that for a lot of people, the choice between eat or heat will have a direct impact on our adult social services. People who are cold are more likely to fall. People who are cold are more likely to struggle with some of their disabilities. People who don't eat properly will have a number of health issues which will impact directly on us, and we won't be getting extra money to cope with the fallout from this policy. So being selfish, it will have could have a direct impact on us.
Thank you, Councillor Wise. If there's no other members, Councillor Stevenson, would you like to sum up?
I will sum up. It's a very interesting point around, is it our job to comment on national policy? Yes, I think it is. I think it absolutely is. And I understand the point about the impact. Will we have an impact? It is about raising awareness. It's about telling our rural story. And actually, the heavens may not be moved or opened, etc., but it is absolutely vital that that rural story in its nitty-bitty jigsaw configuration is told. And I absolutely, and I take your point, Councillor Waller, regarding supporting the MP and working together on that, and I think it's a very sensible point. In terms of your point about the regulatory, if I could say it properly, impact assessment, yes, it is important to use our civil servants to absolutely assess the impact of what is coming through. It may be that the Chancellor hasn't fully appreciated the impact this might have, and actually Councillor Wise pointing out those unintended consequences. So absolutely, I do think that is very, very worthwhile doing that. Councillor Johnson, thank you so much for reassuring me that everything is on track, because I was thinking today when it was -3 degrees feeding cattle, and it's the 21st with a cut-off date of the 31st of December, so that is very reassuring. The one point I would make about engagement, and I understand, slightly linking to your point, Councillor Harvey, the sense of actually all low-income households need to be identified, and that's positive. I do think we need to remember that potentially with this particular group, and you said we do actually need the person to engage, we may be in situations where there are powers of attorney in place, and that actually making sure that there is public awareness and that therefore that support is given. But it is really reassuring to hear that. I think I have just about covered all of the points. I am going to reiterate one point before I've run out of time. I am looking at you very carefully, Chair. In many ways, we're lucky because we've got a breadth of independents, Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, Green Liberal Democrat, Labour. This is an opportunity actually to show we put Rutland residents first, regardless of our politics. This is an opportunity to get the leader working and writing in to raise this crucial awareness. So I respect people voting against the motion. I respect people abstaining from the motion, of course, but I would be really grateful if this motion could be supported. This is about rurality, it is about our residents, and it is about our ageing population. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. So, Council is asked to approve the motion as set out on page 131 of the agenda. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
(19), Chair.
Those against, please raise your hand.
1, Chair.
And those wish to abstain, please raise your hand.
5, Chair. The motion is carried.
Therefore, thank you. Therefore, the motion is carried. So, item 14C, agriculture, pages 133 to 134 of your pack. As I have a disclosable interest myself as a farmer, I will withdraw at this juncture, as will those other two members who expressed the interest as well. So I will hand over to Councillor Harvey, who will take this part of the meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Councillor Clifton, I believe that you are going to introduce and propose your motion.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chairman. This motion seeks to ensure that the voice of Rutland County Council is heard loud and clear, speaking out on behalf of our residents, speaking as one with our farming community, amplifying the call we have heard loud and clear from the National Farmers Union for the Labour government to abandon its stated decision to reform agricultural property relief and business property relief. These measures are a kick in the teeth for our family farms and businesses here in Rutland, as families face the prospect of selling their farms when they can't afford the tax on the death of a loved one, at a time when we need to be growing more food at home and buying British. This couldn't be more damaging. Family farms and businesses are passed down through generations, thanks to APR and BPR. These are not loopholes, but careful tax planning policies that have evolved over decades to protect family businesses and farms, such as here in Rutland, from being split up upon death, and so prevent the economic harm to our economy that this would entail. The measures set out in the budget will rip this up. The family farm tax means that land and assets that generations of farmers have nurtured will have to be sold in order to pay death duties. Labour have chosen to impose these measures on a community that is already under pressure. Rather than give farmers the confidence that they need to invest in their farms, they are ripping up the protections they need to survive. The people who produce the food so that we can pop into our local shops and buy what we need do so without the recognition they deserve, thanks to our farmers, their staff and their families, often the same people. Our food chains stay intact and we have a reasonable degree of food security. The Labour Party's manifesto and candidates repeated this line at this year's general election in July, that food security is national security, and yet 4 months into being in government and they have reneged on their promises to support the very people that produce our food. They have outlined plans that will threaten both food security and destroy family farms and businesses up and down this country. They have demonstrated starkly that they do not value nor understand rural communities here in Rutland. The Country Land and Business Association have provided analysis which says that a typical 250-acre arable farm will be forced to sell 20% of its land to cover the inheritance tax bill. The picture is similar across land use in our county. This is land that may well have been farmed by generations of the same family. If these farms close down, we will quickly feel the rise in food prices and the fall in food security. The future of tenant farmers is particularly worrying. These changes have been strongly criticised by the Tenant Farmers Association. Labour's figures, which they are using to try and justify this, simply don't add up. While the Treasury claims that only a quarter of farms will be affected, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs figures contradict this, showing it to be around 2/3 of farms. The National Farmers Union's figures are higher. it is deeply concerning that the Chancellor has announced this budget measure without seeming to check whether the figures used by the Treasury are indeed accurate. Farmers here in Rutland are having to make immediate decisions about whether they continue to build barns, to buy new machinery, or to invest in their farm businesses for fear that any such investment will push them over the cliff edge of this tax raid. For a government that claims to want growth, this single decision, on top of all the other bad choices made, is anti-growth and will set the sun on many family businesses in our rural economy. Once these family farms are gone, they are gone, and we will feel the consequences a long time after this government is removed from office. That is why thousands of farming people are asking to be listened to across Rutland and from all corners of the country to try and force Labour to listen, to admit they have made a mistake and to retract. This policy risks family farms, our food security and our countryside. We have all seen the events of recent days, the tens of thousands of farming people who have journeyed up to London. What a sight it has been, and what a contrast with so many other protests we have seen in our capital. This is the essence of our family farmers. They are the true backbone of Britain. Please support them by supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton. Just in time, well timed. Do we have a seconder for your motion? Councillor Wilby, thank you. Would you like to speak now, or do you want to wait until later in the debate?
Madam Vice, I'll reserve my right to speak.
Of course, I will now open it up to debate. Members, Councillor Ross, you were straight in there. Thank you.
Thank you. I did not struggle over this issue at all. As is so often the case with issues of general public concern raised by the Conservative Party, it might assist residents if some context was provided for this motion. We have 209,000 farms in the UK with an average size of just 203 acres, and we have got some 100,000 farms are less than 50 acres in size. I will start with the value of agricultural land. The Carter Jonas Estate Agency website helpfully states, over a 30-year period, land values have grown by a robust 369% in nominal terms, or 5.3% annually. They go on to say, against rising inflation, pragmatic investors have been able to use farmland in order to diversify their portfolio and protect wealth, safe in the knowledge that the long-term performance offers a strong value uplift, plus a rental income stream. This explains why agricultural land values have rocketed. So the budget proposes that if a couple own a farm, then they will be able to pass on land and property valued up to £3 million. Let me repeat that figure, £3 million, to a child or grandchild tax-free. This is made up of £1 million, where they combine their standard £500,000 inheritance tax-free allowance, and on top of that, an additional £1 million tax-free each for agricultural property inheritance. Above £3 million, landowners will pay inheritance tax at a reduced rate of 20% rather than the standard 40% that many of us in this room will pay. In addition, this tax can be paid in instalments over 10 years, interest-free, rather than immediately for all non-farmers. Additionally, any transfers to individuals, because this relief still exists, any transfers to individuals more than 7 years before death will continue to fall fully outside the scope of inheritance tax, and there's a taper relief on that. So it doesn't effectively kick in until year 4, I beg your pardon. So should residents in Rutland be concerned at the claimed unfairness of these changes? And I would suggest they should not. The figures tell the story. The top 7% of those claims came from just 117 estates, with a total value of relief of £338 million. Those 117 estates represent just 0.056% of all of the farms in the UK. The Treasury assess, and this number has been debated, the Treasury assess, based upon the 2021 figures, that 500 estates will be impacted by the changes to some degree. Even if this figure is wrong or materially wrong, the numbers confirm that the vast majority of family farms will not be impacted. And this brings me to this newfound concern from the Conservative opposition for our farming community. Alicia Kearns trumpeted the many benefits that would flow from British farmers from Brexit, still not visible through a microscope. And an entire article was devoted to the benefits of free trade deals with Australia and New Zealand. These were negotiated by then Trade Minister Liz Truss, who did not even bother to speak to the NFA prior to concluding what are considered to be, and I quote, very bad deals for British farmers. This according to one George Eustace, then Agricultural Secretary. The Labour Party, in contrast, are seeking to support farmers, and in the budget, the Chancellor also announced £5 billion to help farmers produce food over the next 2 years. This is the largest amount ever allocated for sustainable food production. £60 million for the Farming Recovery Fund, which will help farmers recover from the impact of flooding, which had not been addressed following storms Babette and Henk, and £208 million in protecting the nation from outbreaks of serious diseases.
Sorry, Councillor Ross, you've got 30 seconds.
And in addition, this government is seeking to renegotiate the Johnson government's bungled Brexit agreement on veterinary and phytosanitary regulation to improve export procedures for our agricultural sector. I will oppose this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Brown and then Councillor John.
Thank you, Chair. The resolution includes a demand for rescission of the newly proposed APR provisions. It is clear that the government says it will just not do so. It is my view that the majority of farmers in Rutland would probably accept the proposals that this tax imposes if it were to apply to the investors in farmland who have done so solely for tax reasons and have had no involvement with the actual process of farming the land. And if that was the object to be addressed, I think they would agree. Those investors should be the target of this legislation. And they are the reason why the price of farmland in Rutland has leapt to the uneconomical levels for working farmers to purchase. Whatever your land agent's report says, those are the reasons. Whilst I understand the intention of this resolution and sympathise with parts, the blanket approach of this resolution is therefore regretted, as it does not serve that purpose. Professionally, I've dealt with all land law and legal aspects of estate management that came into my practice for 25 years. In my experience, there are few small farms in Rutland that will be anywhere near viable and have a capital value of under £1 million. There are a few big estates with both in-house farming and tenant farmers, and they will have already, more than likely, planned structures that will escape this tax. My conclusion is that the vast majority of Rutland farms will fall within this tax. Again, my experience, and the Rutland reflects the NFU figures that 2/3 of working farmers over 65 years old. That means statistically they are likely to expire within the next 20 years. DEFRA admits that 70,000 of the 210,000 registered farms are likely to be caught by this tax. Therefore, by simple arithmetic, that represents in the next 20 years an average of 3,300 farms a year will be caught by the tax, not the few hundred that are given, or the 117 that Councillor Ross has called, or is it 500? One can't be sure. So it's the Treasury figures contradictory to the DEFRA figures, which is not good government. He talks about the majority that have relief on farmhouses worth £1 million. These farms are in Rutland usually integral parts of the farm buildings themselves. it is difficult to identify those as separate units. The price of therefore would be discounted considerably from what would be otherwise the open market. To get the further 1 million relief that is claimed, then it's going to be really quite difficult for these farmers. They say the transfer to units to children or grandchildren 7 years before the death. These farms are invariably highly geared to the bank. Okay, you try asking bank managers permission to transfer properties subject to a mortgage. They just resist it. And that's what happens in practice. What about farmers approaching 80? How can they have the chance of transferring those money? What about widowers or a widow running a farm that they aren't going to be entitled to the extra money? So this qualification that the Prime Minister's, and I don't want to get political here, as said applies, doesn't necessarily apply. It is an ill thought out and unfair provision. Despite my reservation as to the value of this resolution, I will support the same. But I do not think that it can be successfully amended to achieve what I think would be acceptable. As we would therefore really have to put into the motion alternative scenarios, which
Sorry, Councillor Brown, you've got 30 seconds.
which I believe are not within the remit of this council. I reflect Councillor Powell's views on this. And I think they should be rightly left to national politics. I will therefore vote for the resolution, but are disappointed on the wording.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I will support this motion. It's not perfect in its wording, but I think the intention is there. What I'd like to talk about is business rather than agriculture, which hasn't been mentioned. And the BPR element of this is difficult. We need entrepreneurs, we need business angels, we need people prepared to put up capital. This is a very short-sighted measure. Sorry, not the motion. The legislation, I believe, is a very short-sighted measure in that it will make businesses less efficient if they have to be split up. Often businesses are also highly geared when they start up, and they need a low cost of capital. The legislation to tax in the way proposed will make them less efficient, it will increase the cost of capital, and it will make banks consider whether or not it's worth lending to those businesses. And I think we need businesses in Rutland that are prepared to expand and take risks to expand. If we force those businesses to constantly think every generation about splitting or selling or refinancing, then that will cause those businesses not to exist. Quite simple, because the people that would have founded them won't take the risk. They'll do something else with their money. And I think, therefore, that the legislation is very short-sighted, and I will vote in favour of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Hemsley.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. I am an ex-farmer's son, I suppose, for want of a better description. Our farm was sold in 2010. It was sold to a holding company because the government were talking about changing the tax standards then, and that was a Conservative government. So, you know, this is something they've chosen to do, and I understand the impacts on our farming companies and everything else. And the mixture of people in the county who have small or larger amounts of land, and values of their land varies greatly depending on if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. And you know, this taxation is going to be a staged one. We paid actually quite a lot of tax considering we were exempt. The government still harvested, getting on for $750,000 from us on the farm sale. So I don't think there's much change. I think they've just formalised it in a way. I do think it's destructive, but I think the debate in here and the motion and everything else is far too political. We should actually focus on what we can do without getting political. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemsley. Would anyone else like to? Councillor Wilby.
Thank you, Madam Vice. I cannot offer you the statistics that have been so eloquently put by other members of the committee. All I can go from is my heart. We extol the virtues of Rutland, and we say what a wonderful rural community is. We know that it is a farming community, and we know people have farmed in those areas for a long, long time. Not all those farms are super efficient. We are all striving to make things efficient as possible. That means probably getting new equipment in. All the equipment prices are rising continually. The food that we eat, you know, we want to try and produce locally, so we are reducing the costs of getting it to market. All I can say is that this motion just stands us full square behind our farming community in Rutland, and it says, I don't think the government has really looked at all the problems, the unintended consequences, which Councillor Wise mentioned earlier on, are many, I think, and I think, therefore, I would very much support and recommend this motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilby. Do any other members wish to speak? No. Councillor Clifton, would you like to sum up?
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chairman. I would just say to thank members cordially for their contributions, and I'll just briefly add that as these proposals stand, they will cause enormous and, I fear, irreparable damage to our rural family farms and businesses here in Rutland. These are not the right proposals for our county, and I would humbly invite you to please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton. So Council has been asked to approve the motion as set out on page 113 of the agenda. So may I ask all those in favour, please raise your hands.
(15), Chair.
Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands.
(6), Chair.
And any abstentions?
Motion's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the motion is approved. And we will ask the Chair to come back and take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews, for redressing me. Oh, right, where are we? We've moved on. Item 15, any urgent business. I have been notified from Councillor West of one item of urgent business. Councillor West.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is very quick urgent business, and it is urgent because it is simply to congratulate for tomorrow the residents of Brook who will become a centenary, 4:23 p.m. And I hope I can express everybody's wishes in this chamber in congratulating him on Mr. Harold Killingback will be 100 tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor West, and I'm sure Council echoes that, those congratulatory statements. The date of the next meeting will be the Thursday, the 27th of February. Therefore, that concludes the business of this meeting. Thank you, members. I declare this meeting closed at 9:05.